Thank you. Okay, we are on week number 6 of Ezra. It seems like the past 3 weeks I've had a very similar sermon, and it's not changing today. But I want to keep going. I'm going to keep Ezra the way Ezra was written and not skip. So I attempted to skip ahead today, but now we're going to stick on this. So where were we? How did we get here? Well, we started off where they were sent back by Cyrus to rebuild the temple. That was chapter 1. Chapter 2, they actually rebuilt the foundation of the temple, and they had this amazing experience. And when it was all built, they kind of stopped for 15, 16 years, and we're going to talk about that. So this is how Ezra 3, when they finished building the temple, they laid the foundation. With praise and thanksgiving, they sang to the Lord. He is good. His love toward Israel endures forever. And all the people gave a great shout of praise to the Lord because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. But many of the older priests and Levites and family heads who had seen the former temple wept aloud when they saw the foundation of the temple being laid, while many others shouted for joy. So it's an interesting experience as they're kind of washed with emotions. Some people are very, very happy for what they see, right? They say, look what we've done. This is amazing. We got the foundation laid here. It's been 72 years. You can see they'd be a little bit happy. And then some people are looking at it and says, this is nothing like what was there. You should have seen what was there before. You know, like us old gray hairs who are always talking about how things used to be better back in our day. And so they start crying when they see it, while others start shouting. But the interesting thing is how the Bible describes it. It says, no one could distinguish the sound of the shouts of joy from the sound of the weeping, because the people made so much noise, and the sound was heard from far away. So the interesting thing is the way the Bible describes this is noise. Doesn't matter if you're weeping, it doesn't matter if you're shouting, it was just noise. It was noise that carried for a long way, but noise is just chaos. And that's kind of a definition of noise. It's audible chaos. It's called noise because it doesn't make any sense to us. Right? There's not words. It's not singing. It's not, some kind of a thing that we're hearing and loving the beauty of it. It's just noise. It's chaotic noise. It's like scribbling on a paper when it's audible, right? It's just chaotic noise. Here's the interesting thing is God's not in chaos. God creates from chaos. He doesn't lead us to it, right? God actually started, the whole world was in chaos, and he creates from it. God takes chaos and creates from it, but what he doesn't do is take us into chaos. You don't see that in the Bible. In fact, we're told by Paul, Jehovah is a God not of confusion, but of peace. He's not bringing chaos. He doesn't want chaos. He wants order. When he created the world, he told us, go out and subdue it and bring order to it. He's a God of order, not a God of chaos. He uses chaos to create from, but he doesn't take us to chaos. So when you see Ezra 3 ending in what is effectively chaos, God's not there. God is not taking them into chaos. What we're watching there is a human emotion. In fact, it's a full range of human emotion. The full range from crying to shouting is a full range of human emotion, but it's all human emotion, which also tells us that this whole event so far has been all human. They're doing it by their might and their power. They haven't had to ask God for anything yet. And that's how this whole thing starts. We kind of don't see that until it sits for 16 years and they do nothing, right? Sometimes what feels like a spiritual momentum is just noise coming from our own effort. And sometimes we really get those two things confused. We really think things are going great when all we've done is made a lot of noise. And heaven's watching that and going, no, you're nowhere near where you need to be. Now, ask me how I know that. It's because we started a church with a lot of noise. And that's how it kind of really started at the beginning. And we thought it was going great. It's fantastic. And God said, all I hear is noise. It's like when Samuel shows up to Saul. Saul was supposed to kill all the livestock of the Amalekites that they destroyed, and so he's supposed to wipe them out, And he gets there and he kept all the good stuff. He killed the weak stuff, the stuff that was no good, but all the good stuff he kept. And they're waiting for Samuel to get there to bless them. And Samuel comes walking up, and Saul sees him and says, "Hey, Samuel, good to see you." And Samuel is like a little bit salty. He goes, "I'm sorry, I can't hear you above the noise of the livestock that were supposed to be killed. That's all I hear," right? I think sometimes we do that. We've been disobedient to God, and we think that God's going to really be happy with us. And God said, "I can only hear noise right now. I hear noise in your life. I see noise in your life because you're not doing what I told you to do." But we get confused, but we're moving, we're doing stuff, we're shouting, we're weeping. It's this emotional experience of here, God, you're not in it. There's a lot of people in church this weekend having emotional experiences, and God's not there. It's just simply a human emotional experience, and we have to pay attention to that. Or as one of my favorite writers, A.W. Tozer, puts it, we are always in danger of confusing activity with spirituality. We're doing stuff for you, God. You're doing stuff. Not for me. An awful lot of times we do our will in God's name, and that is not the same thing as doing his will. And so that's what's happening right here. Now, don't get me wrong. They were supposed to build the foundation. But they haven't turned to God to ask him about anything because we got this. We have the letter from Cyrus. We have all the stuff we need. We don't need to talk to God. We're good. I got this. We have this. We're going on. Many, many years ago, when I was in my career, in my tech career, I got offered a job by a competing company for a lot more money, a 40% raise. And I was very excited about that. And as you can imagine, it took me all of 5 minutes to say yes to the offer. And I was talking to my mom on the phone with it and telling her, bragging a little bit, "Hey, your boy's doing good here, I, at that time, was now making more than anybody else in the family, which was something since all my brothers had college educations, and so your boy's doing all right, so I'm telling her about this job offer I'd gotten. And when it was all done, she says to me, "So did you pray about it?" And I remember I got angry that she asked me that question. I literally was angry. I said, "I've been praying for it. Why would I have to pray about it now? I've been praying for this to happen, this very thing to happen. Why would I pray now?" My mother was right. I should have prayed. That's the time you pray the most, by the way, is when something good's happening to you. Things happening to you good take you away from God far more than things happening to you bad. It's been my experience since. But I just never forget. I'll never forget how angry I was with her for asking that question, which should have showed me she was right. I never prayed to ask God if that was the right thing to do. I just said, well, of course this is the right thing to do. I want it. So clearly, this is what God wants, right? So the summation of Ezra 3 is the foundation was laid. That's a visible achievement that they could hang their hats on. Yay, there was shouting, there was weeping. But the result is human might and human reaction. Human might build it, and then they had a human reaction. Emotions are not spiritual reactions. Now, oftentimes you'll have an emotional response to a spiritual response. If you have something the Spirit moves, you'll feel an emotional response. That's true. I oftentimes have cried when God has spoken to me or something like that's happened, just like you get overcome. You feel it. Or sometimes you just laugh with joy. I've had that too. But just because you had an emotion does not mean you had a spiritual experience. People sometimes confuse those two. So what we have here is human might had a human response. And a human response, heaven heard as noise. That's not what they thought, but that's what heaven saw, and heaven was right, because then they do nothing for 16 years. For 16 years, it just sits there, because our human strength will often produce emotion without endurance. Emotion doesn't have endurance. In fact, emotion is almost like burning paper. Burns up fast and it's gone. And sometimes leaves you discouraged. A lot of times, your deepest spiritual low will after you come up to this really great emotional high. And your great spiritual low will hit after that, because we think we're doing something in the spirit, but we're not. We're just burning up emotion. So oftentimes people end up from that moment, which is what happened here, they quit. They quit for 16 years. Why would people quit? Why do people quit? Look around you. Why do people quit? What happens in our spiritual lives where we quit? Well, one thing is, we're seeing both of these reactions in the people there after the foundation. It's disappointment. I started this, I thought it was going to be great. And it's not. This is not what I expected. I expected more than this, God. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a ministry, thought we'd be out of this building a long time ago and in our own building by now. It's not great, Lord. This isn't what I expected. This isn't what I wanted when we started here. It's not what I thought we would be by now, 11 years later, right? I could be very disappointed in that because I had this idea, which I didn't ask God about, that I still have an idea, right? And heaven's seeing differently than I am. But we can get disappointed in that. We can also get disappointed if it's happening in our own lives. You know, hey, God, I went to Bible study, and my week was horrible this week. It was terrible. I got a flat tire. My boss was mad at me, and I did the right thing, and these bad things keep happening to me. What's going on? So we can get disappointed like that. Or, hey, I did the right thing. I apologized to my parents or my brother or my sister or whatever, and I did the right thing, and they didn't seem to care at all. Right? I did the right thing, but it doesn't seem to be doing any difference. I see no change in them at all. Or just pick one. I mean, you've had it. You've had these things where I was convinced God told me to do this, and I did it. I was so excited about it, and it didn't have the result I expected, and I'm disappointed in it. It's less than I expected. It's small, right? That's one thing. We have this. It's just not as great. But the other thing is the disillusionment, which is, boy, this is a lot harder. This is a lot harder. I don't know if you've had the experience of watching your child go off to school the first day of school. Sometimes mothers don't see it because they're too busy crying, you know. But I remember when Emily went off to school, she was so happy, you know, a little lunchbox, a little backpack, off she goes, you know. It's a big moment, of course. You watch them go off to school. And it was exciting for her. She came home and she was so excited. For that whole week, she was excited. Monday the next week, she's like, wait, I have to do it again? Oh, yeah, for 12 years. Hope you enjoy this. You're going to do that for 12 years. No! You know, I didn't know I had to do it again. I did it. I don't want to do it again. So it's just harder and slower than you imagined, right? I didn't know it was going to take this long, God. I wasn't expecting that. I thought I could just kind of zip to the front of the line now. Isn't there one of those passes like they have in Disney World? You can just go to the front of the line. You don't have to sit through the whole line. I didn't want to be here this long. That's not what I had in mind. Join the crowd, right? Read the Bible. I'm sure Moses wasn't expecting 40 more years. I'm sure when they sold Joseph off to slavery, he did not think it was going to be 12 years. It's not as long as I thought it was going to be, God. David hiding for 15 years from Saul. Didn't think it was going to take this long when you told me I was going to be king. I thought to start off great, killed Goliath, here I go. Now I'm hiding for my life. It's throughout the Bible. It's nothing new. It's not the first time it's happened, but we get disillusioned. And we say, that is not at all what I expected. But there's scriptures for us, you know, in disappointment. This is what God comes and says, do not despise small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begun. You know, I haven't changed my life. It's like when I started my diet because my heart pressure was all up. I started my diet. That whole first week, man, nothing. I just tell you, no, it's a small beginning, Mark. You've been eating poorly, you know, for years, and you've been eating right now for a week. It's going to take a while. But God rejoices the small beginning. So it's a small beginning, but it's a step in the right way, you know. Sometimes it's a step backward, right? If you're going the wrong way, a step backwards, a step in the right direction. You know, sometimes we have to backtrack. But God's like cheering. Heaven is cheering for you. You're doing the right thing. Stick with it now. But you have to do the right thing. There's a guy named Sam Shoemaker who's probably not as famous as he should be. He actually was co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's actually from the area. And he was located in McKeesport for a long time. And I believe he's Episcopalian. And he was an addict himself, and he got clean, and then he had a heart for addicts. And in his church, he would always try to get drunks on the street to come to his church. And sometimes they would. His church people didn't like it so much. You know, you're sitting there, and especially back then, because you put on your Sunday best when you went to church, and so you'd be sitting there, and here comes some guy stinking of alcohol and sweat, you know. And so this one person decided to have a conversation with Sam Shoemaker about it. And he says, look, I appreciate what you're doing here. I do. I understand you're doing God's work with the winos. You know, I get that. I'm not sure about how you're doing it. I don't like really the way you're going about it. I understand it's a good idea, but I don't like the way you're going about it. And Sam Shoemaker said to him, I don't like the way I'm doing it either. But I like the way I'm doing it a lot more than I like the way you're not doing it, right? So sometimes you have to take that. It's like this is what God called me to do, right? And I might be getting some things wrong, and it might not be perfect. I understand I'm making mistakes, but I also understand I'm doing what God called me to do. And as long as I'm honestly seeking God and trying to do that, then I can be okay. I can go to bed at night and say my prayers with peace because I know I'm doing what God wanted me to do, the best of my ability. Disillusionment, we have the scripture on that, Galatians. Paul says this, he says, let us not grow weary while doing good. That's hard, especially when the people around you aren't doing good and they seem to be being blessed anyway. That's the hard one, right? It'd be one thing if everybody who did good was blessed, everybody who did evil was not blessed, this would be an easy world to live in. We'd be figuring it out. So, okay, let's just do good because I want to be blessed. But we're now operating selfishly. And the whole point of this is God wants us to stop operating selfishly. So it's not going to work that way. It's not going to work that the Christians never have any problems and the other people do. That's not how it works. Those of you who've been Christians for more than a day, you know that's not how it works, right? And so Paul says, don't grow weary of doing good, for in the due season we'll reap if we don't lose heart. So that's really important. He says, we reap what we sow. You're sowing good things. You'll reap good things, just not today. That's not how it works in the land, and that's not how it works in your spiritual life. You plant seeds, and by the way, once you've planted the seeds, it's a lot of work. Planting the seeds is not easy, but that's the easiest part. Now you got to take care of the weeds. Now you got to water it. Now you got to kill all the bugs that are trying to kill your plants. I watch my wife tirelessly working in her garden, and people don't understand why she has this flourishing garden when they don't. And like our neighbor, and I watch them plant it, and they'll water it, and that's all they do. Victoria's out there testing soil, and she's watching for bugs, and when the bees aren't there, she's taking, I'm not kidding, a paintbrush, and she's taking the pollen from one, and she's putting on this. Somehow she knows the difference between a male and female plants, and she's doing that until the bees take off and do it for her. And there's a reason why she has a crop every year, and our neighbor really doesn't. That's because it's a lot of work. It's a daily work. In the summertime, she's out there for hours, right? It's work. Planting the seeds, that's the easy part. Do you know when you reap, in the case of this, it's going to take a while. And the bigger the crop, the bigger the plant, the longer it takes before it ripens. So if you're planting seeds in your family's life, it might take years for it to produce the fruit. But, he says, let's not tire of it. Let's not quit doing the good work. We have an opportunity, so we need to do good. Let's do good for all. We need to do that. We need to do good. There's a quote here from a guy named Oswald Chambers. You may know that name, some of you. He wrote a very, very famous devotional called My Utmost for His Highest. He says this, emotion is a poor substitute for obedience. And I think a lot of Christians need to learn that because a lot of Christians try to live on emotion. So no, you actually have to be obedient. And it doesn't even matter how happy you are about it. Jesus tells a story about two sons are both told to take care of the crops for the family. And one says, yeah, you bet, Dad, I'll go do that. And then he doesn't. And the other one's told to do it because I'm not doing that. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to do that. But he changes his mind. He goes and he does it. And Jesus says, which one did the will of the Father? See, it doesn't matter how emotional you are about it, how happy you seem. And oh, yes, Lord, I'm for you. I'm doing it. It doesn't matter if you're not obedient. What matters is what you do, not how you say it. Or it's just what did you do that matters. So then, of course, what happens in the story of Ezra, we get the divine correction from Zechariah. Also Haggai, I haven't talked about him very much, but because Zechariah has some of the famous verses that we know, right? We know that Zechariah comes along, they're sitting there for 16 years, they do nothing. They absolutely do nothing for 16 years. And Zechariah comes to kind of get them started again. God sends his prophet to jumpstart them. And he tells them this, he goes, listen, this is the word of the Lord. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord. See, what they started in was in their might and their power. Right? Might is your internal strength, and power is the provisions they had. They were given all the stuff from Cyrus. They know how to do this. We built stuff. We got this. And they went in their might and their power. And God says, yeah, that's not how this is going to get done. But by my spirit, by my Spirit. Now, what has happened is you have 16 years of no activity. None. That's a very hard thing to get started on. Momentum's kind of important, and this is like, the old thing that a body in motion stays in motion, a body at rest stays in rest. Same thing with workers. You get a worker resting. They don't want to get up. And so Zechariah is trying to tell them, it's okay. I know that nothing's happened. You've been discouraged, and you don't think you can do it, but that's because God's Spirit wasn't in it. But he's the prophet of the Lord, which means he is coming with God's word, which means his Spirit is now here. See, God let them languish to show them what they can accomplish in their might and their power. But now he's adding his Spirit to it because the word of the Lord came. So God is there now in presence. He is there. He is God's presence. Now we have the Holy Spirit. But in those days, they had prophets. And so the prophet was sent in with God's Spirit. He says, now the Spirit's here. Watch this. Who are you, O great mountain? So you think there's a mountain in front of you can't get over? I'm going to wipe it out, make it a plain. It's going to be level ground. It's going to be wiped out. And he says, you're going to see it. And he's talking about Zerubbabel, the guy who started this whole thing. He's the one who's going to bring forth the capstone. And as I said a couple weeks ago, watch what he says. And when it's all done, you're going to shout, grace, grace. Grace is a gift. Grace is a gift, right? Grace is something God gave us we don't deserve. That's what grace is. He says, when it's all done, you're going to say, grace. Not, look what we did. Grace. Look at what God did. When it's all done, you're going to say, I did it. Because I want you to know I'm here, and through my Spirit, we're going to do it. See, God calls them to believe in him, not in their abilities. Your abilities failed. You built that thing and did nothing. That's okay. I need you to believe in me again instead of you. And if you believe in me instead of you, we're going to move forward from here. Now, the interesting thing is he does acknowledge it's a small beginning. Now, I love, God's not sugarcoating it here. He's not rewriting history. He's saying, well, that's actually really good, guys. We're not congratulating the kid, and putting his crayon drawing on the refrigerator. Yeah, that's really good. Daddy is as big as house. Yeah, that's really good there. That's excellent. That's excellent. He says, no, this is small beginnings. You've done nothing right now. You've built a foundation. That's it. But it's okay. I can take that. I can take the smallest beginning you have and make something from it. You understand? He's telling me, it doesn't matter how small it is because my Spirit's here now. I'm really good with taking small things and multiplying them. Of course, we see that in the New Testament. Remember? Jesus is preaching this all-day sermon. You could think my sermons get long. Jesus was there all day. And his disciples come up and says, Jesus, first of all, I think this is great. This marathon sermon you're doing, fantastic. I personally love it. But we've heard some mumblings and some grumblings. People are getting hungry, Lord. And you know me, I'll sit here all day with you. But just for the people's sake, Lord, maybe we need to send them home. We need to send them home for the people's sake. Send them away. They can go in the villages. They can get some food. I think they're hungry, Lord. And like I said, I think it's great. But I think they're getting hungry. We need to send them home. I love the disciples. And Jesus says, they don't need to go away. You need to give them something to eat. Like, okay. And they're looking at the crowd. Me? What? And they start looking around for food. Does anybody have food? No, we weren't expecting to be here for 12 hours. No one brought food. Right? And so they were able to gather up from one boy who had basically a Lunchable with him, his mom set him up with. We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And Jesus says, it'll be enough. Bring them to me. Right? He doesn't need more than that. All he needs is somebody to bring him something. He doesn't even need that, but he wants them to be part of this. He wants his disciples to be part of this great miracle, and they are. And that little boy is going to get a chance to say, you're not going to believe what I did today. I fed a crowd of 5,000 with Jesus, right? It's enough. The small beginning's enough. It's okay in his hands. God can do anything with what you surrender. He will do nothing with what you withhold. You need to know that because we hold back a lot. God, I'm going to give you this, but not that. I'll let you run this part of my life, but not that part of my life. This I need to do, but I'll give that part to you. You understand you're holding back. He's not going to do anything with that. He says, surrender all to me. If you give it all to me, you're holding back. You're withholding something. You're not giving me everything. I'm not working with that part. You're giving me this part to work with. But if you give me that part, you'd see what I could do with it. We have to understand that's how that goes, right? So moving on now, picking up the story, Ezra 6. Finally, we're in Ezra chapter 6. I know, taking a long time to get here, but I won't spend that much time at Ezra 6. I promise you. People's like, man, he's just getting started. I'm halfway done. Relax. So if you remember last week, what happened was when they finally get started, the governor of the region comes and says, hey, who said you could do that? And they said, God in heaven said we could do this. And they said, okay, who are you? And they gave their names. Here we are. Here's who we are. Okay, you need to stop this. I said, we're not stopping this. We were told by Cyrus, the king, 2 kings before Darius, that we could do this, and God told us to do it, so we're doing it. And because of bureaucracy, they had to go send a letter to Darius. I said, okay, well, let's send a letter off and see what Darius wants to do. So they sent it off to him, and he gets it, and this is his response. King Darius issued an order, and they searched in the archives, stored the treasure at Babylon, and a scroll was found in a citadel in the province of Media, and this is what was written on it. So they found a scroll from the scribe 2 kings ago. In the first year of King Cyrus, the king issued a decree concerning the temple of God in Jerusalem. Let the temple be rebuilt as a place to present sacrifices. Now, I'm going to tell you, Ezra 6 has the whole letter here. I'm not going to give you the whole letter, but that was the main part of it, that I want you to go do that. Let's do that. So when Darius sees that, and he saw that they're right, they're doing just what Cyrus had commanded, he sends a letter back to the governor and says, okay, Tattenai, the governor of Trans-Euphrates, and all you other officials of that province, stay away from there. Leave the Jews alone. Stay away. Do not interfere with the work on the temple of God. Let the governors of the Jews and the Jewish elders rebuild this house of God on its site. Leave them alone. Don't touch them. They're right. They're doing what they're supposed to do. Furthermore, I decree, if anyone defies this edict, I love this, because he not only thought up the punishment, he thought of how it would take place. He says, a beam is to be pulled from their house, and they're to be impaled upon it. That's something, huh? We're going to take your house apart and impale you on your own house. And for this crime, their house is to be made a pile of rubble. May God, who has caused his name to dwell there, overthrow any king or people who lifts a hand to change this decree or destroy the temple in Jerusalem. God's there with his name. He'll get you. So they have the full authority now and the backing of the king to continue doing what they're doing. So they prospered in this way, right? It said they prospered. They go on and they prosper. So the elders of the Jews built, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah. I want to show you that because it says they prospered, but why? Why did the people prosper? Because the word of the Lord was with them. See, the first time they built it, there was no word of the Lord with them. But now the word of the Lord is with them. And because Haggai and Zechariah were there giving them the word of the Lord, they were able to prosper in what they did. So that changed everything, right? The word of the Lord, because the Spirit of the Lord was with it, which is what he told them. Not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit. His Spirit is right there with them. Again, we have the Holy Spirit with us. But in those days, they had to have the prophets. They didn't have one, they had 2. And that's why they were there. And so the temple's finished at last. And the temple was finished on the 3rd day of the month of Adar, which is the 6th year of the reign of King Darius. And then the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the descendants of the captivity celebrated with the dedication of this house of God with joy. I'm just going to point out, it took them 4 years to finish the temple. It sat for 16 with nothing done. The difference between working with the Spirit of the Lord and working with your might is very significant. It's unfinished for 16 years after human might failed. It was finished in 4 years when they were led by the Spirit. This is the difference. This is the difference in their lives, right? But watch what happens next. Because remember what happened the first time? The shouting and the crying? This is what happens now. And they kept the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. That's Passover, folks. Back to doing Passover for the first time in 72 years. Over. And they had 7 days with joy. For the Lord made them joyful and turned the heart of the king of Assyria toward them to strengthen their hands in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel. So after the first time, all they had was noise, but now what they have is joy. See, joy is God-given, not self-motivated. The bad news is you can't give yourself joy. You can't work yourself up into a feeling of joy. The good news is God gives it to you. And because it's not based on your circumstances, God can give you a joy anytime. So we see here a journey from emotional noise to lasting worship. 7 days of joy. And now the Bible defines it. The first time it was shouting and weeping. It was it was just noise. It was just a bundle of noise. Not now. Now it's worship. It's joy expressed as worship for 7 straight days. They have joy. This is a wholly different thing, right? They're wholly different to have joy. So you can always tell whether something is building your strength or by God by what it produces, pride or praise. See, before they had a lot of pride. Now they have a lot of praise. Because what they see right now, after 4 years the temple was built, that's all God. And when they saw that he even turned the heart of the king to fully support everything, they said, wow, look what our God can do. Of course, God had done that at the beginning. That's how Cyrus gave the edict to begin with. They forgot that part, and they thought it was all on them now. God's put me here, you know. God's probably going to be glad he got me here because I'll get this done. I've got this now. We see that happen with Peter when Peter is with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration, right? And there's Jesus, and all of a sudden there's Elijah, and there's Moses. They're seeing the light of heaven coming down. And what does Peter say? Oh, it's a good thing I'm here. Yeah, literally says that. It's good that I'm here, Lord. I know what to do now. We're going to build 3 temples. And God speaks, says, shut up. When God actually speaks, tells you to shut up. You've overstepped your bounds. Shut up, Peter. This is my son. Listen to him. Right? This is what happened. So is it pride? Oh, lucky you have me, God. I'm here now. I know how this is done. Or is it praise? Dear God, this is amazing. Thank you for letting me be part of it. It's different. It's a different reaction. And this is why they have joy. Before they had an emotional experience, but now it's coming from something different. It's their spirit is being lifted up. It's not their human, emotion is part of the human experience. Joy is part of the spiritual experience. It's being lifted up that way. So what do we have from lessons of Ezra? Well, we have to continue even when results seem small. Don't stop because it seems not what you thought it was going to be. Did God tell you to do it? Yes. Did you do it? Yes. Okay. Now it's up to him, right? Now he'll do with it what he wants to. Doesn't matter if we think it's small. He thinks it's enough. Don't despise small beginnings. And we also have to know that God uses faithfulness more than faith. I need you to understand what I mean by that. Because it seems like double talk. Faithfulness, faith. What are we talking about? A lot of times we have this thing that faith is this magical belief. And if we just have the right faith, he'll do anything we want. It's a teaching, actually. As long as you don't doubt and you have this perfect thing called faith, he'll do whatever you want. If you read your Bible, you'll see he does stuff with faithfulness. Faithfulness is doing it even when you don't feel that something in you. Faithfulness is continue even when it doesn't feel like, oh, this is great. I've said this before. One of the things that really concerns me, the big expression now being used in the Christian world is, I had a rightness in my spirit, and so I did it. You know what you're saying? I wanted to do it, and God didn't stop me, so I did it. I had a rightness in my spirit, so I went ahead and did it. The things that God has called me to do, that looking back across my life, I realized that was God calling me to do it. I had no rightness in my spirit, ever. Ever. I always think, oh, this is a mistake. Oh, this isn't going to work. Why are you asking me to do this, Lord? I don't want to do this. I never had a rightness in my spirit. I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning the night before we opened this church. What am I doing? This is nuts. I've never had a rightness in my spirit looking back and saying, oh, but that was God. But here's what God wanted, me to get up and open the doors. It doesn't matter what I'm feeling. This rightness of the Spirit is a lie. We're just waiting for this perfect faith, and then we'll do it. No, be faithful. Faithful is operating the way God spoke. I'm going to do what God said to do, whether I feel it or not. God works through faithfulness, not faith. God's will is not discerned by your emotions. I'm just going to tell you that. Which isn't to say you won't have an emotional experience when God moves. That's a different thing. But you can't use your emotions as a guide to what God's speaking. You just can't, because God will call you to do things that don't make sense. It's not true that God doesn't give you more than you can handle. That's a lie too. God gives you more than you can handle all the time because he's there with you. Okay, a couple parting questions here. We're almost done. What foundation have you started that you walked away from? Is there something in your life you started something and you felt for sure God told you to do it and you did the beginning of it, but then you quit for some reason? Could be a lot of reasons. Life gets in the way. Something happened. Those reasons are called Satan, by the way. He's always trying to make us stop things. That's what happened with them. Satan discouraged them. Has Satan discouraged you from doing something you know he called you to do? He called you to do it. You know he called you to do it. You started it, then you quit. Why? Are you discouraged because it's not good enough? Not big enough? This can't possibly matter. This is so insignificant. Something God taught me somewhere along the way here in the past 11 years was, he says, I am great, so you don't have to be. That kind of changed my life. Oh, I don't have to be great? Okay. That makes it a little easier on me. God's great. I serve a great God. I don't have to be great. I just have to be enough. So what maybe do you need to start again? What's God speaking to you and saying, it's time to start again? Don't despise small beginnings. Start again. This time, bring me along. And let's see what we can do together. There's a guy named Eric Liddell. The name may not ring a bell, but there was a Academy Award-winning movie back when Academy Awards meant something called Chariots of Fire. It was basically his story. Eric Liddell was a devout son of a missionary who was going to college, and it turned out he had a natural gift to run. And he got recruited to join the UK Olympic team because he was that good. And it turned out that the day he was supposed to run in his event, it was Sunday. And because of his deep religious beliefs, he believed it was wrong to compete in an athletic sport on a Sunday. And so he told the Olympic Committee, I'm not running. And the whole team depended on him. He was on a relay team. And they tried. They had a meeting, and they brought him in, and they put all kind of pressure on him. And he says, I'm not going to run on a Sunday. The movie's all about that. It's a great movie, by the way. You should see it. But the end of his story, if you don't know, is he ends up going to China, where his family had a mission, and he was murdered there, eventually, martyred for God's kingdom. Because his mind was always on, I'm only doing this little Olympic thing is a side journey. My real job is I'm going to be a missionary to China. That comes out in the movie too, by the way, that he's going to go to China. And he does. But before, he said this: obedience to God's will is the secret of spiritual knowledge. I get people sharing stuff on my Facebook feed all the time about some new secret thing they found. Some new book. It's like the Book of Enoch, the secret. No, it's not even biblical. But there'll be this secret, that secret. You know, all kind of bestsellers come out with these secret things, the secret to Christianity, the secret to knowing God's will, the secret to getting your prayers answered, all these secrets. Here's a man who knows. He's saying the secret to spiritual knowledge is obedience to God's will. It is not willingness to know, but willingness to do God's will that brings certainty. See, he was able to stand against the entire nation and say, no, I'm going to do God's will. And he knew for certain what that will was because he was obedient to it. We want it the other way around, right? We want you to make your will certain to us, and then we'll be obedient to it. But God says, no, I need you to be obedient, and you'll know my will. It's the secret, he says. That's the secret. Not the willingness to know. We all have the willingness to know God's will, but the willingness to do God's will. So a final question for you. Do you want to know God's will for your life? Christians tell me that all the time. Preach a sermon on knowing God's will. That's all I want to know. If I knew God's will, I wouldn't need anything else. Just show me that. But my question back is, you should first ask yourself, am I willing to do God's will for my life? Because if you're not willing to know it, you'll never hear it.